Good evening, students. Today we're going to talk about Indian foreign policy. Okay, so this is India's 21st century foreign policy. And the points I took for today's class is from Pax Indica by Shashi Tharoor. He has a PhD from Tufts University and he is also a current member of Parliament of India. He's a liberal and he's in the opposite party now. The governing party is conservative, as you know, and he has wonderful ideas. He's a scholar, has written a lot of books. So from his book, I thought these are valid points to express and get an idea of India's foreign policy. So the first point is India's foreign policy is dependent on its environment, its federal structure, that is the political structure, right? And its geostrategic needs because of its geography, where it is located. You cannot choose your neighbors in international affairs. United States, for example, is lucky to have two weak neighbors, Canada and Mexico, right? In the east and west ocean, what a lucky. Whereas India has a lot of enemies around, like one is Pakistan, okay? And China, it has fought wars. So let's look at India's foreign policy from each of the countries. So I'm going to focus on Pakistan first, then go to China, and then also look at India's foreign policy with the United States, the global superpower. Okay, so now India, before I go to the second point, India is willing to do business with anyone. It's very pragmatic. And what it wants is, it wants to connect its poor people. India has a lot of poor people to the international economy. And so any foreign policy that helps to make that happen is a successful policy. And I agree with Shashi Tharoor on it. And that is the goal of building India's economy and lifting its people out of poverty. So it's a national interest, you could say. National interest is to improve the welfare of its downtrodden people. Third one, when it comes to nuclear policy, India is the only country, okay, there are 9 countries which have nuclear weapons, which you know, only country that has said it is willing to work with the world to give up its nuclear weapons. Yeah, based on conditions, of course, but it's very promising if you are a supporter of global zero, which means bring the world without nuclear weapons, all the countries to give up, okay, because of the dangers of it accidentally going off or by intentions. Now let's talk about Pakistan. Okay, in this part of lecture, Pakistan, 2 things I want you to keep your eye on. One is Pakistan's military, we'll be talking about, and also Pakistan's training of militant terrorism. These 2 things Shashi Tharoor talks about. So I have certain points I will be giving to you and you could write it down. The first point is history. When you look at a history of India and Pakistan, the West, the United States supported Pakistan from its inception, since it got its independence, whereas India leaned, even though India said in the Cold War we are neutral, Soviet Union protected India in the United Nations, especially in the UN Security Council. There are only 5 superpowers in the UN Security Council, right? US, UK, France, Germany, right? China. And so, I'm sorry, not Germany, England, right? So the 5 superpowers. And so even one of them votes against it, it's a veto. Russia, Soviet Union voted in support of India. Soviet Union voted in support of India anytime when it comes to Kashmir issues, okay? Whereas US supported Pakistan when it comes to Kashmir issue. Kashmir issue, since India's independence to now, is a contentious issue, okay? Now, the second point, current Pakistan, the population is growing in large numbers, just like in India. But unlike India, Pakistan's population is highly uneducated, okay? And it's unemployable. There's not much job opportunities. and the youth are frustrated. And so radical religious fanatics and military dominates the system. Are you following? So that issue will dominate India's foreign policy for a long time, because India have fought 4 times major wars with Pakistan in 1947 to 48, right, and 1965, write it down, and 1971 and 1999. 4 times India have fought wars, and so Pakistan has 6 times its army on the side facing India's border, compared to the border in the west, where it has more threats from Al-Qaeda, terrorism, and the jihadis. But it doesn't worry about that as much as it worries about India. So Pakistan's military is completely located mostly in the Indian border. So now, Shashi Tharoor used a very, very unique way of putting it, so I'm going to quote it. He said, when it comes to India, India is a state which has its military. When it comes to Pakistan, a military has a state. Because in Pakistan, military is everything. It ruled Pakistan for more than 35 years. Almost half of the time, Pakistan has been free country from India, right? Separation. It's ruled by the military. Never in India has military ruled India. It was a democracy. Okay? Military rule never happened in India. So military is the strongest institution by far. So what's the big deal about it? The big deal is, because of it, Pakistan army neither wants to have war, because all the wars it fought with India it lost, nor it wants to have peace. Because if it has peace, then the army's uniqueness and power it holds in the country will decline, because you don't need to spend so much money for Pakistan's military. You know how much it spends? 25% of its GDP. That's huge by far than any other country. Like for the United States, spends mightiest military in the world, 4%. Israel spends 10% of its GDP in the military. Pakistan, 25%. Okay, so you understand. Now, and India has said it will not use its nuclear weapon as first strike option. What does that mean? That means I will not, if Pakistan, India have a war, India will not use it as a first strike. But Pakistan president also have said we won't use it as a first strike. Pakistan military haven't agreed to it. Pakistan military have never said that they will not use it as a first strike. Okay? Pakistan has an intelligence agency considered named as ISI, Inter-Intelligence Services. Okay? Inter-Services Intelligence, ISI. And this agency is indirectly supports jihadis and militants. It's not just from India's side they write about it. Even Pakistani reporters and scholars write about it. Okay, there is a scholar who has written, his books are New York Times bestseller even in the West, and he has written a book called Taliban, and he wrote, why would you think that let me correct myself. Pakistan army uses jihadi. So his name is Ahmad Rashid. He said Pakistan army uses jihadis and militants to train them and send them as terrorists into India in order to balance the power. What do you mean balance the power? Because India is stronger, its economy grew and it becomes more mighty. And terrorism is usually used as a tactic by a weak state against the strong. So there's a state-sponsored terrorism of Pakistan sending terrorism into India. The recent one is the 26/11, like 9/11, 26/11. Indians have day first and then month. 26 is the day, 11 month. The terrorist happened. Hotel Mumbai, Taj Hotel in Mumbai was under siege, and terrorism, shooting and killing happened. You probably watched the movie, which I put for the class. So now this is a real incident which happened, which changed, and later we found out, and U.S. intelligence found out, these young men were trained by Pakistan Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorist group and sent into India to create havoc and destruction. Pakistan also have Bin Laden in Abbottabad. Abbottabad is the place. You could teach a whole class on that Bin Laden raid, how the United States went and killed, but this is not the class for it. But the place he was, Abbottabad, is an upscale neighborhood. Where he was is where the military people, higher echelons, military generals, when they retire, they live there. And Bin Laden lived there. And Pakistan never said or denied that he lived there. They were protesting that America violated its sovereignty and went to kill him. Right. Now, India faces terrorism, or was killed by terrorists, more than any other country except Iraq. When he was writing this 5-6 years ago, the book Sashi Tharoor, that is a big point. And then you could say, why don't it retaliate like Israel does? Some Indians ask, look, Israel, when it's attacked by terrorists, it retaliates. Yes, Israel retaliates in Golan Heights or in Gaza, but those are places doesn't have nuclear weapons. India, if it retaliates against Pakistan, full retaliation could provoke a nuclear exchange between Pakistan and India, which not only these two countries don't want, but even the world doesn't want, because the ramifications have a huge impact around the world. And the US will be there, oh no, don't, please back off, both of you. Reduce the tensions, because it's in two nuclear countries. So Pakistan and India are nuclearly armed and play with fire in sending in terrorists, Pakistan quite often. So the US tried to create terrorism acts in the UN. UN has like 13 conventions against terrorism. If India tries to create a comprehensive one on especially state-sponsored terrorism, which means state creating, supporting, funding terrorists and sending them, then when India tries it, Sashi Tharoor says many other Muslim countries blocks that being created as a convention, to ratify the convention and other things. Now, I want to, what point did I didn't cover? By equipping the militants and jihadis for 20 years, Pakistan have created a Frankenstein monster that it couldn't control, because these terrorists are doing suicide bombings even inside Pakistan, and it's becoming a security threat for Pakistan itself. So, Frankenstein monster, that even the creator cannot control it. That's what is happening. So India talking in foreign policy, can we put sanctions that will affect only the Pakistan military? And yes, if the international community comes together, you could. And there's another way. Pakistan makes money by supplying UN peacekeepers to UN peacekeeping forces. Pakistan sends soldiers and it's international currency revenue. And that could be cut or threatened to cut unless they stop terrorist acts. But India doesn't have a permanent position in the Security Council, or doesn't have the influence to bring all the other countries to do it. Anti-India in the media of Pakistan sells. You know where they learned it from? They learned it from India, because Indian media sells anti-Pakistan to its own people. So both these countries, the people are sold by anti of the other. And so the, the, the tensions continues. Now, let's see. What should be the option other than the military or terrorism? So the better way for these two countries, foreign policy wise, is to focus on peace. Why peace? Because without peace, there can be development. Development is a big word. You could get a graduate degree in development, right? Economic development, I'm talking about. To alleviate poverty. India has been alleviating poverty since 1991, when it changed its course towards free market capitalism. Pakistan, the condition is getting worse in terms of economic conditions and the population bulge in that country. So to educate its population, to provide jobs. For example, Indians get great education, many of them go to Silicon Valley in California and create new IT companies. And this author writes, Shashi Tharoor, he's a liberal. He actually is a supporter of a lot of Muslims. He says if India retaliates against its own Muslims because of what the terrorists have done, then the terrorists have succeeded, because that's what they want, to create the divide between Indian Muslims and Indian Hindus, so the author says. So I just want to put that point there about him using his points. What is his intention? Shashi Tharoor is Hindu. Shashi Tharoor says, on the other hand, Pakistan youth, unemployed, uneducated, need a purpose, and so they can go and make new IT companies in Silicon Valley. They go to Swat Valley and make bombs and become terrorists, because the family gets some money to be a suicide terrorist. You understand? Predicament. Now, Pakistan, what is the main contention of Pakistan and India? The main contention is Kashmir, I've said. And Pakistani columnist, this is their own columnist, Yaqub Khan Bangash, his name, Yaqub Khan Bangash, said, Kashmir has a higher literacy. Kashmir has higher economic growth and per capita income rate, higher per capita income rate. Per capita income means the GDP divided by the number of people, one person, how much per capita income rate, compared to entire Pakistan. Okay, compared to the entire Pakistan's GDP economic rate, per capita income, literacy rate, economic growth, Kashmir has it. Why would Kashmir want to join with Pakistan? Just because most of the people in the state is Muslims? No, he argues, Yaqub Khan. So now, to improve Pakistan's development should be the goal. Then India and Pakistan should come together and focus on development rather than spending enormous money in fighting each other. It's waste of lives and waste of resources. But on the other hand, we will doubt that Pakistan military will let that happen, because then the military officers and others who have the power, who have the resources of the state under them, can lose the grip on that power. It's hard to give up power. They won't, right? So that is the point. Now let's talk about China and Indian foreign policy. When it come to China-India relationship, there's different ways to see it. First, you have to see the economic trade. China is India's number one trading partner. Number one, okay? India didn't want to fight two-front war with Pakistan and China, okay? That's one of the reasons it leaned towards Soviet Union, so that Soviet Union will keep a check on the communist Chinese at the time. Now Chinese are not communistic Chinese. The political party is communist, but they have a free economic model. Okay, capitalism is unleashed in 1970s. Since then, 78. Since then, the economic growth have astounded the world. The economic growth is unbelievable. Okay, so India did it 13 years later after Chinese did. So it takes time for India to catch up. But compound interest, as you know, it's compounding the growth. Even when India was opening its free markets into free markets, China was already in double digits in 13 years, its economic growth. India was in 5% growth. So China is far ahead in terms of economic growth than India and brought out a lot of people out of poverty. India has a long way to go still to bring out people out of poverty, and it has its problems of, yes, more number of cell phones are sold in India, but there's also a lot of illiteracy problems, right? China has achieved almost perfect literacy, the country, equal in par with international standards. Literacy means to read and write in their own language. That's all, right? And so China holds about $3 trillion of the foreign currency invested, and half of it is in US Treasury bonds. It could actually impact, in one stroke, it could impact US market, US economy, but also it'll affect Chinese economy if it does anything like that rash. So now, let's compare China and India further, not just in economy, but military also is much bigger than India, because you could convert the economic might into military might, right? And Beijing Olympics, #1 country in terms of winning the medals, almost 100 medals. Out of that, 51, I think, 51 gold medals, the Beijing won. How many did India win? 1 gold medal, 2 bronze. And that 1 gold medal is also by a guy who's an entrepreneur himself, who has his own rifle range. He practiced. The government didn't help him in any way. So he won the gold medal. India is not resourceful in training athletes like China does. You following? Yes, the Chinese state is much more advanced than Indian state. As a government, they are very efficient and effective. However, when it comes to private entrepreneurial enterprising, Indians are far more better than the Chinese counterparts. Interesting, isn't it? Okay. Development-wise, China, Shanghai has more skyscrapers, like 4,000 skyscrapers, more than putting Chicago and LA put together, Shanghai has. India doesn't have that money, not even remotely anywhere near skyscrapers. Okay, India doesn't have proper electricity for almost 272 million people. Public defecation is still a problem in India. There are people who still defecate in public because of not having access to clean toilets. Yes, there are more cell phones sold. That's technology, but basic necessities. Yes, India is growing fast. It's one of the top 3 fastest growing economies in the world, with China and India in top 2. But the point is, it has a long way to go. What are the tensions between India and Pakistan? Yes, in the 1960s, India and Pakistan have fought a war for a land dispute area. Now, if you look at the tensions, the first tension, write it down, is Dalai Lama. You know Dalai Lama? Yes, the Buddhist monk who comes to Central Park and he is like a rock star, everybody crowds. He lives in India, right? But he is from Tibet. When he was young in Tibet, the Chinese army came to capture him. He ran in the middle of the night to India and asked for political asylum. India gave him asylum. Yes. Along with him, 110,000 Tibetans. and but India doesn't recognize the Tibetans in India as Tibet's government abroad, because that will annoy China and will create further tensions. But even giving Dalai Lama a home in India has created tensions between India and China. It's land conflict, right? The land problems it had and created a war. China had similar land problems with Soviet Union, now Russia, and Vietnam, its neighbors, but it resolved all those. But with India, it hasn't. Even in 21st century, the same land area which created the 1960s war, the problem triggered again, and war. Well, not full-fledged war, but killings happened. Soldiers shot each other, and then they flew jets, and the Chinese brought more military there. Indian Prime Minister had to send the biggest troop movements, all this tensions. Why are they? The second reason, second tension, before I go further, Dalai Lama is a religious leader and political leader for Tibetans in exile. He gave up his political leadership to this Harvard-educated guy named Lob, Lobsang. So Lob Sang that's one first name. Last name Sangai, Sangay. He's a 42-year-old Harvard graduate. Political leadership was taken by him. Now Sangai is a sore point for Beijing. He's still living in India, and he's considered the political, and they want to catch him, Chinese. The second strain, US-India nuclear deal. Now, India exploded a nuclear weapon, so US put sanctions on India. But then Bill Clinton came and supported India, become friends. One of the reasons is to create India as a counterweight, geostrategic counterweight to China. Okay? Because there's a lot of commonalities between the US and the India. For example, both are democracies, both value pluralism, both are values of human rights, right? Whereas China is an authoritarian state. It's not a democratic country, and it's growing in power, and it's the one which could challenge US. So US is aligning with India, not Democrat or Republican, both sides. And that is an annoyance for China. And China, what it does, they play a game called Wei Qi, W-E-I, Wei. Qi is Q-I. It's a game. It's like encircling your opponent. So they are encircling India. How? So China has built ports around India with the support of the neighboring countries, like in Bay of Bengal, which is the east side ocean of India, in Burma. Chinese have built. In the southern tip of India, Indian Ocean, with the help of Sri Lanka, southern Sri Lanka, south of Sri Lanka, they built a port so they could project power anytime. And in the west, with the help of Pakistan, they've built a port in Gwalior in Arabian Ocean. So Arabian Ocean, Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal, they're encircling India so that in time of war, India could be attacked from all sides. Are you following? Yeah. So Shashi Tharoor says India versus China is not just a geostrategic or economic rivalry. It's an existential, he says, existential threat. Okay. Third problem, tension between China and India, is water. Well, around the world, drinking water is running dry. Rivers run dry. There's a book written by a scholar who did 4 years of study. And one of the areas of contention is Brahmaputra. B-R-A, Brahmaputra is a river flowing from the Chinese side to India and there's been sayings that they might divert the river. Who? Chinese might. Already Indians are parched because of the population increasing and there's a water scarcity. So if they do anything like that, it will be a point of war because on base of water. There's future water wars possible around the world. There's a documentary you could watch, Water Wars. So that's a third area of contention. Are you following? Okay. The fourth area, but before I go further, 43% of Chinese have an unfavorable view of India. And 39% of Indians have an unfavorable view of China. There are more Chinese hate Indians than Indians hate Chinese, I guess. Problem fourth one. US and India maintain quasi-diplomatic relations with Taiwan. You know Taiwan, the small island next to China, big mainland. It is during Chinese Civil War, the capitalists took over that island, the communists took over the mainland. So since then, Taiwan was considered by itself as an independent country. It has its own passport, own government. It's a capitalistic model, unlike this was for a long time communistic. But China believes that is part of China, main China. Taiwan shouldn't be recognized as a separate country. So even when India sends ambassador to every country, when it sends to Taiwan, it wouldn't be called as an ambassador. So Taiwan, when you bring, India has good relationship with Taiwan. When the relationship grows, China is very careful. One China policy. That means Hong Kong, which is a contentious area. This one, Taiwan, all this one China policy. So areas of tension. That's another one. Four areas. Are you following? Okay. Now, let's talk about US for 10 minutes and then we'll finish this session. US relationship with India. You know, US relationship was not good with India historically, right? Cold War time, it supported Pakistan. Because of supporting Pakistan, when the war in Bangladesh happened, Richard Nixon was the president. He sent the 6th Fleet to Bay of Bengal in favoring Pakistan to fight against India. But since then, now things have changed. Both Republican and Democrat support. Since Bill Clinton went there, George W. Bush is the one who supported the nuclear deal with India, the next president. And then after that, Obama went to visit it to India. What did Obama say? When he spoke in the parliament, he said he would help India achieve a permanent position in the UN Security Council. There's only 5 big powers sitting there. And he is saying India has come to that status. Now it should be one of the permanent members. I mean, he gave the word, but his term ended by that. It didn't happen. But even giving a verbal support from an American president saying that in Indian parliament has some weightage. The relationship, they're building it, and you could say it as a counterweight against China. But India doesn't want US-India relationship to be an allies. They want just it to be a friendship. Because if it's an ally, you have compliances to do. That means, say, you and I are ally. If you are attacked, even if it's a defensive alliance, I have to come to your rescue. If we are offensive alliance, if you go to war, I have to come to you, with you to go to war. So I don't want to have those compliances. So then it's just friendship rather than alliances are called as allies. India doesn't want alliances. Indians used to come to America even in 1770. The first Indian came into America in 1770, and he was looked at like, oh, where did this guy come from in America? But 1890s, a lot of Sikhs, with the turban, Singhs, their last name usually, Sikhs came and settled in California and became farmers. One of them even applied to American citizenship and said that at the time only white Aryans can apply. Said I am Aryan. You know the Aryan history of India. I am Aryan. But the Supreme Court denied that, well, you're not white enough to be an Aryan, so we're not giving you citizenship. They didn't give him. until 1965, Lyndon Baines Johnson, a liberal immigration policy, which created immigration support for people from Asia to come, including including India. And that changed. Many students started coming from India to America. And guess what? One of the students' name is Shyamala Gopalan from Tamil Nadu, the same state as mine. Does that name ring a bell? Kamala Harris' mother. She came here and PhD, Berkeley, I think, and also a researcher of cancer. Kamala Harris, her daughter, now is the VP elect of the United States. So Indians are actively getting participated. Indians living in America are participating in raising funds for both sides. Nikki Haley, Republican governor of South Carolina, first generation Indian immigrant parents. Bobby Jindal, governor of Louisiana, Republican immigrant Indian parents. So things are changing for Indian and US relationship. Okay? And it happened more in terms of security, especially after 26/11. That is the Mumbai Taj Hotel attack, the terrorist attack. Then there's a strong cooperation in counterterrorism. The last point I want to discuss is India is clearly going to join the US in the top 5 world superpowers, great world powers. Why? Economy, size of the economy, it's already in the top 5, right? 4 if you adjust it for PPP, purchasing power parity, right? And so when India, militarily also, it'll be because there's youth bulge, there will be more youth. China is an aging population, India is a younger population. For next 20 years, it'll overtake China in its population. Population is important in terms of for fighting, you need people, right? So India will take its place in its power, and US will get involved because US is the oldest democracy in the world. India is the largest democracy, and then having commonalities together. Democracies don't fight against each other. This is democratic peace theory, DPT. Scholars have studied, and democracies don't usually fight against each other. Authoritarian, look at the states US have fought, all against authoritarian states. So the relationship will grow further and going to go. The next lecture I will be doing on India's role in the UN and its soft power status, all those things. Until then, good luck, keep learning.